Upon opening a forgotten mailroom crate, one courier realized these threat letters weren't just old. Their secrets had outlived everyone who'd sent them. Some threats vanish, others just wait to be found. In the spring of 2021, the sorting facility at a major logistics company in Pittsburgh was humming with its usual chaos. Parcels zipping along conveyor belts, labels flickering under scanner beams, a chorus of barcode beeps echoing into the high rafters. Mark Phillips, a veteran courier with 13 years on the job, had learned to tune out almost everything except the strange and the unexpected. He prided himself on his peculiar sixth sense for odd boxes, the kind that somehow called for a double take. Mark's daily routine was a blur, lugging sacks of mail, inventing stories for the nameless senders, frantic notes, faded packages, the classic mystery of human intent wrapped in cardboard. The facility itself seemed like a strange city within the city. Shadowy corners piled with undelivered goods, locker clusters from retired employees, and the infamous dead letter cage overlooking everything like a watchful crow. On a slow Thursday, as the pandemic receded, Mark volunteered for a little spring cleaning of the storage wing, a place untouched for years, shrouded in dust and history. Most of the bins held boring relics, old flyers, magazine bundles, parcels with missing addresses. But at the far end, stacked behind cracked crates and wrapped in faded police tape, Mark found a locked metal box marked simply, Hold, USPS Investigation 1993. The key, helpfully, had been left dangling from a nail labeled, Do Not Open. But Mark, who always read caution as invitation, couldn't resist. Inside was something that didn't make sense. A thick sheaf of yellowed envelopes, carefully bundled, all bearing high-security red seals and urgent, threat stamps. Some dated back to the late 70s, others to the Reagan era and beyond. Each one had various destination cities, Detroit, Boston, Santa Fe, all undelivered. Many bore handwritten warnings, do not forward, handle with gloves, law enforcement, follow-up. What had happened here? Mark's mind spun with possibilities. Unmailed threats from old stalkers, failed extortion attempts, forgotten criminal cases. Out slipped a note from the box, official, crisp, with a faded signature from an FBI field agent. Case pending. Letters held for forensic review. Materials toxic. Do not open without supervisor clearance. With pulse pounding, Mark called his supervisor, Lila Bennett. Lila, more a bureaucrat than a storyteller, frowned. Don't touch anything, she said. Let's log a chain of custody. This is above our pay grade. Yet, Mark's curiosity already burned. As the sun dropped behind the warehouse, Mark watched local law enforcement arrive, uneasy, masked, passing the envelopes into protective bags. The letters left, but the questions remained. Who wrote these threats? Who were their targets? And why had no one delivered them in all these decades? And, more hauntingly, was anyone hurt by their silence? Mark found himself unable to sleep, his thoughts haunted by the crate's strange cargo. He returned the next day, hoping for closure, but only received more questions. The investigation was shifting from a dusty inconvenience to a major event. By noon, a team from the local FBI office, a hazmat squad, and several postal inspectors had assembled in the break room, reviewing feverish logs and waybills. The news soon spread through the Courier grapevine. Threat letters found. Case reopened after decades. Did someone drop the ball? Rumors swirled. Mark, now unofficially cast as the catalyst, began obsessing over the origin story. Why did the investigation freeze in 1993? Why did these warnings linger, undelivered, well past their expiration dates? A tall, taciturn postal inspector named Deborah Kim led the debrief. She explained that undelivered threat mail, especially involving toxins or bombs, was sometimes quarantined during forensic reviews. But what was unusual here was the sheer time span. Some letters referenced notorious criminal and political incidents dating back to the 1970s, including the wave of mail bombings like those committed by Franz Fuchs in Austria, and the ricin-laden letters mailed in 2003 by the elusive Fallen Angel. "We're not looking for explosives here," Deborah assured them, "but there may still be toxic residues." Most were intercepted before anyone got hurt. A few were held as evidence, but the larger question is why they disappeared into storage instead of being logged in federal chain of custody records. The team spent hours cataloging each envelope. Among them were threats addressed to regional judges, CEOs, and even a city council member, referencing embargoes, policy grievances, and disturbingly, revenge for alleged betrayals. One, written in blocky caps, read, "You broke your promise. This is my last warning." Another, dated October 1984, declared, "If this reaches you, know I watched you every day." Mark, a lifelong student of city history, recognized several names cited as targets. One had been the subject of a public corruption case in the mid-'80s. Another had vanished amid rumors of embezzlement. Had these threats simply missed their recipients? Or were they discarded intentionally, burying more than just bad news? Deborah shared limited insight. Back then, mail threats weren't always prioritized. Some might have been sent as pranks. Others came from unstable individuals whose patterns weren't clear without modern tracking. A significant complication arose. A set of the letters contained strange powder stains. The hazmat team ran field tests, revealing a benign but alarming mixture of talcum and charcoal, intended to simulate anthrax. This detail tied the case to the era's deep anxieties about biological mail threats, a panic that had shaped protocols for decades. Then, another red herring. A series of envelopes stamped, "For lawyers' eyes only," turned out to be satirical threats, written in jest among court staff. While they weren't dangerous, their presence muddied the archive, creating confusion about how many real threats remained. Amid the chaos, Mark reflected on the pause and reflect moment. None of the recipients had ever reacted to these threats, because none had ever seen them. Would their lives have changed had they received the letters? Would history be different? His own family history, marked by a cousin's involvement in a mail fraud case, suddenly felt unnervingly close. One tension peak arrived when inspectors found an envelope that, according to facility logs, had redirected 5 times between states. Its chain lost after the original addressee died in 1996. The system's failure to deliver, intended as a safeguard, became a cover for permanent obscurity. The second peak followed when a reporter arrived, looking for the courier who found the lost threats. Press attention shifted from the letters themselves to the fragile human cost. How many lives had lived in oblivion to risk, fear, or closure denied? Quoting Deborah, "Threatening somebody by mail is a felony. But when the threat never arrives, not out of mercy but bureaucracy, who bears responsibility?" As the news coverage grew, local talk shows aired cautionary segments. If you're a potential target, ask about missing mail. National outlets referenced historical biomail scares, reminding viewers of diseases once imagined to travel in letters. For days, the warehouse felt like a crime scene stuck between time zones, the past's shadows colliding with urgent present-day protocol. Mark watched as federal agents sealed the last evidence bags, the yellowed letters now central to a wider investigation. Yet as authorities frantically pieced together timelines, the most startling revelation wasn't in the ink or the threats. It was in the gaps, the silences, the normalization of misfires and missed warnings. A break came when Postal investigators uncovered an internal memo from 1993. Pending review. Warehouse to retain threat mail for disposition. FBI/USPS joint action delayed due to leadership transition. The entire cache had been forgotten, not by malice, but by paperwork and turnover. Dozens of officials had come and gone, and the box was simply never recalled. Yet the true twist: fingerprint analysis found on several envelopes matched not only the original senders, whose details could sometimes be confirmed from criminal and psychiatric records, but also law enforcement officers and postal employees assigned to the case decades ago. In at least 2 instances, investigators identified now-retired officers who admitted, in recent interviews, that frightening threats were sometimes kept out of circulation if both parties were dangerous or unstable, for fear that delivery would escalate violence. That policy, now unthinkable, was rooted in the 1980s and 90s anxieties about vigilante justice and the often hazy relationship between law, mental health, and community safety. One recovered logbook included a chilling note in the margin: addressee deceased, warning futile, sender in custody, risk of copycat, archive only. The last, most disturbing layer came as officials cross-checked the names. Some intended recipients had, over the years, suffered inexplicable assaults, fires, or breakdowns. While no evidence directly tied these incidents to withheld threats, families, learning of the letters decades later, were forced to re-examine old wounds. "We always wondered if someone hated Dad," said one daughter on a local news segment. "Knowing there were warnings no one showed us. It's heartbreaking." The case broke wide in national media as a kind of grim parable. How institutional caution or disruption can unintentionally write secret histories. The rare public statement from the FBI read, "Our responsibility is to the safe, lawful transmission of mail. Any deviation requires deep, corrective review." The Postal Inspection Service, newly alert to legacy mail risks, doubled down on internal audits and public transparency about dangerous mail protocols. Mark, now known as the Courier who uncovered the threat letters, watched it all with a bittersweet pride. Few employees, he realized, ever get to return something truly lost, even if it's just the truth. Months after the rediscovery, federal agencies instituted new safeguards, including digitized threat tracking, high-security mailroom equipment, and mandatory quarterly audits to ensure that dangerous correspondence never vanishes again. Mark faded back into a quieter routine, knowing he'd unwittingly pushed the postal system toward overdue reform. Yet, for the families who learned there were warnings long hidden, there was no neat closure. Only the uneasy clarity that bureaucracy can wound as surely as malice. What is the greater risk? The terror of knowing, or the quiet harm of secrets kept? As the investigation closed, officials emphasized, no threat should be forgotten, and no warning should be lost in the shuffle. Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.